What if I told you that the U.S. military once tried to spy on the past of Mars? Using nothing but the human mind, remote viewers have claimed to have seen alien civilizations, pyramids, and ancient beings on a planet millions of years ago. From the Cold War psychic experiments to a bizarre Martian mission.
Today, we're exploring the strange world of remote viewing, a practice that is part science, part mystery, and all unbelievable. Buckle up, because on this episode of Zumundous, it's about to take you where no mind has gone before.
Zumundous.
And welcome to Zumundous Podcast, episode 15. We're going to talk about remote viewing. I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm psychic.
That's clairvoyance.
That's something that's different, but associated with remote viewing.
Yes, not to be confused with psychosis.
Yeah. Which maybe some of these people might have.
They
I don't
might.
know.
Who knows?
So if you're watching this and you clicked on it and you're wondering what remote viewing is, I'll tell you this. Remote viewing is a practice where individuals attempt to perceive distant locations, objects, or events using only the power of their minds. So it's often associated with a psychic phenomenon. It gained prominence in the late 20th century through experiments conducted by intelligence agencies like the CIA and the U.S. Army.
Yeah, it got real popular in the 70s for some reason.
Yeah, I think they made a movie on that with George Clooney. I think it was called like The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Men Who Stare at Goats, yeah. And we'll get into that. But during the 80s, we actually tried to do it, like the government.
The government tried to spy on other intelligence and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, this is described by the Stargate program, which is not to be confused with the Stargate movie.
I confused it.
As a mental process by which an individual perceives, communicates with, and or perturbs characteristics of a designated target remote in space and or time. So apparently, according to this theory, you can psychically project your consciousness not only like across lands, across to like a different place, but you can also change your perception and see things that happened in the past.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
I can like imagine something that I mean, I guess if you don't know, yeah, what we're going to get.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So, I mean, but the question is, it's like, according to this theory, is it only certain people that have this ability? Can only certain people do it, or can everybody do it? And the answer to that is, according to the theory, once again, is that everybody has the untapped potential to unlock this part of your mind and project your consciousness. I know, I don't know if there needs to be like some sort of Jedi training school we can all attend.
There is. It's called the Monroe Institute of Remote Viewing.
Oh, really? That actually exists? How much does it cost to join the Monroe Institute of Remote Viewing?
I don't know, but I know on day one they hand you an envelope with a picture in it and a number on the back, and that's all you get. And you have to look to see if you can see what the picture is. The number is just the number of the picture, right? Like,
2742.
No, like,
okay.
Yeah, but so maybe they label the pictures 1 through 10. You look at it, and they said you'll surprise yourself. Like a lot of people go in there like this is not real, and then they'll be like, oh, it's a picture of a cat, and be like, get it right or whatever.
That's pretty weird. But then why we should be able to do that outside of like this remote viewing institute as well?
Let's say you picture the post office or something right now, and are you picturing it in your mind's eye, just imagining it, or are you actually remote viewing it?
Well, I don't know. I haven't. So if I think about like my local post office or whatever, I don't go in there very much, obviously.
Right.
But like, I have a mental image of like what it looks like, and then of course I just create NPCs, so to speak. That
maybe they're really there.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe
I just thought about that. It's kind of weird. Yeah.
But yeah, the participants, as you said, are given minimal information about a target, often just coordinates or vague descriptions, and are asked to view details about the target mentally, so are they really seeing it, or is their mind's eye just kind of filling in the blanks?
Not sure.
No, we don't know, but there's a lot of skepticism around it, and rightfully so. This one's reaching, it's out there, man, at least based on what we know.
Right. And of course the movie about it's sort of comedic in nature, so it's kind of a silly concept,
Of course.
And I don't mean that like to knock it. I'm just saying it's kind of it's just far out there.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, the most famous program that we have to talk about here, which is of course the Stargate program,
which is an awesome name.
I mean, that came out, like, they did that well before the movie came out in the series. So the Stargate program operated from 1978 to 1995. I think it's about the same year the Stargate movie came out, actually.
Yeah.
And it was dedicated to investigating paranormal experiences, primarily for government intelligence purposes. So this was established during the Cold War as part of a broader attempt to compete with the Soviets' advancements in psychic research, or at least what they believed was happening. They believed that the Soviet Union was also doing this same thing as well. So, so they focused on remote viewing to gather intelligence or on inaccessible or classified sites, including military installations and missing people. And their methods to this, it had protocols included double-blind testing to reduce bias.
Okay.
So, they would try to put variables in there so that, not just one person would see something and say, this is what I saw, but if you had two people doing it and they both saw the same thing,
you could kind of,
you could,
well, not confirming, but yeah, you have two of the same instance. And
right.
that's one of the things with these experiments have always been, they're kind of not replicable, right? And and the type of information that it's kind of hard to repeat the same process, I guess, unless everybody like remotely viewed something in a box or,
right.
I'm not sure how you would make a baseline, right, for accuracy there.
Right. Well, despite some occasional successes, there was claims of achievements, which included locating a Soviet submarine in 1979.
Pretty cool.
Which was later verified by satellite imagery. So that's pretty cool. Despite those occasional successes, a 1995 report concluded that remote viewing's operational value was minimal. Like they had a couple of things where they believe that it was a success, but it was so few and far between that it was a minimal thing.
Okay.
And it didn't consistently produce actionable intelligence.
Right.
Now, go ahead.
Okay. No,
I was just saying, on the budget of this, the government spent about $20 million over a course of about 20 years, which is
not bad.
Which, I mean, that's a pretty small amount when you think about it. That's about $1 million a year put towards research on this.
More money than we'll ever see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. But, for the government, like that's nothing,
Yeah. For a program to run that long and have a, full life cycle of figuring out whether it works. And if it did kind of work, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well,
whether it worked or it was luck or, however.
Yeah. I mean, well, like I said that, that there was that Soviet submarine in 1979, which they did see.
There you go.
And, but once again, over like 20 years, I think there was probably more misses than hits, kind of, but skeptics will argue, and they'll say now that programs like Stargate were more about confusing adversaries than actual paranormal breakthroughs. But, still, I mean, maybe it could like create like a bit of paranoia in our, in the opposition kind of thing, where if they believe that they have psychics that can see these things, then, maybe you're less likely to do
like
something.
Some Minority Reports.
Yeah. It really,
neat,
yeah. But there's been one interesting piece of information, which this one's wild. Is
this the one I like?
This one's wild, and this happened in 1984. This was a CIA experiment conducted in 1984, which was declassified, and you can go in and you can read these reports. But this happened, and it's in a document titled CIA Mars Exploration, May 22nd, 1984.
All right.
So there was a remote viewer, later identified as a man named Joseph McMoneagle, who was handed a sealed envelope containing the instructions: planet Mars, time of interest, approximately 1 million years BC. And the coordinates for various locations on planet Mars were provided during the sessions, but the envelope was not opened until after the experiment. So Joseph described in this several things. One of them was tall, thin humanoids that appeared as shadows or static images.
Okay.
A large pyramid structure, or several of them, that were used as storm shelters, which I think this is probably where the Stargate movie kind of probably got its idea from.
Yeah, pyramids in there,
for sure, on an alien planet. Obelisks and channels resembling roadways.
All right.
And an ancient civilization in decline with survivors in hibernation. So they were.
So this is all things speculatory on any good UFO show too.
Yeah, exactly.
Mars, right?
For sure, definitely. So this was conducted at the Monroe Institute.
Yep.
And neither McMonigal nor the session monitor, which was Robert Monroe, were aware that the target's extraterrestrial nature was the target. Essentially, they didn't know until the session was over.
Okay.
So the Mars session's strangeness kind of set it apart from the Stargate's usual focus on terrestrial locations, which led to debates about its purpose and validity. So, I mean, I would say that, that's far more interesting than spying on, Soviet submarines and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're trying to, remote viewing some dude's desk work?
Yeah, exactly.
Which could actually have a lot of benefit, I would imagine, especially if they're reaching like some new technology or something. But
so, I mean, that led to like some wild theories about, humanoids on Mars, over a million years ago. And I mean, it's funny too, because there's been a lot of speculation about
there's water.
They're like Mars once had waterways and things like that. Like we know that for a fact. We know there was once water on Mars, and it actually still exists.
It's ice
in the pole, and it still exists on Mars in the polar ice caps, unless I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure.
You're right.
Yeah. So I mean, and it makes you wonder. Like, there's been satellite images of strange what they think that might be structures.
They look a little like pyramids.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not convinced they're there.
No, I'm not convinced they're there. But I mean, then of course there's always like the famous face on Mars.
It's actually like a big mountain, I think, or something. Like
but the way the shadows are cast on it looks like
super cool.
It looks like a face.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, this is so this was Joseph McMonigal, and he came out later and said, I'm a psychic spy and I'm a believer in this. And he is a retired Army Chief Warrant Officer, and he is one of the current most notable figures associated with remote viewing.
Yeah, there's a lot of information on him, actually.
He was I can tell you that he was awarded the Legion of Merit for his work in the Stargate program.
Oh, that's good.
He wrote several books on remote viewing, including the Stargate Chronicles and Mind Trek.
Is he the guy they based the movie off of? I think so. Maybe.
You mean? I think the movie was kind of its own thing.
The Men Who Stare at Goats. No, I think one of those guys.
Oh, you mean? I was thinking of Stargate, not the Men Who Stare at Goats.
Stargate's
no, it's okay.
Awesome movie though.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, his insights on the Mars experiment. He later recounted the Mars session in Mind Trek, which is a book you can go check out, including sketches of the humanoids he perceived. Ooh. And he even, he even expressed skepticism about targeting extraterrestrial locations due to the lack of verifiable evidence. So he's one of like the head people in this, and even he's saying like, I don't know, guys. I don't know what this was. All I can tell you is what I saw, and I don't know if what I saw was real. But this has kind of raised a lot of questions, though, particularly with how we as people, as humans, we perceive time. Like we perceive time in a linear fashion.
Correct.
But if you go into like a lot of theories of like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and things like that, and you get into string theory, like time string theory, and essentially like time isn't really a line so much as it is just a ball. Everything touches itself, and everything is actually happening all at the same time. But from our perspective, we can only perceive time on a linear scale. So it's and if they couldn't, if that wasn't the case, if time isn't on a linear scale, then then why can you see into the past? You know what I mean?
Which would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said, time is just our perception. You know what I mean?
Keeps on slipping
into the future.
No, yeah, I watched a thing this morning about that actually, just a YouTube short, and somebody was talking about remote viewing, and he said you can look in the past and you can look in the present, like current, like happening right now. he said it's a little harder to look in the future because one, it hasn't happened yet. And they talked a little bit about
or has time,
or maybe it has, or maybe it's happening right now, right? According to the ball theory.
Yeah.
But that it could also change, right? So like you could view us doing the podcast, but maybe you're sick one day and we postpone a day, right? So the whole thing.
Well,
change, right?
and I mean, it just kind of, that always kind of, and that goes in with the philosophy of fate versus free will. Like, did I really choose to do this, or was I always going to do this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Point, yeah.
Or maybe I chose to do this, so I've always done it. I'm like, I've gone cross-eyed now, but it just begs a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But critics of the remote viewing and the Mars experiment often highlight more grounded explanations on this. The first of which being psychological operations. So some theorists argue that programs like Stargate were designed to confuse or intimidate adversaries rather than achieve real psychic breakthroughs. So basically, it was a mind game.
Smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors, exactly. There was budgetary concerns, even though it was a relatively low cost of $20 million over the course of 20 years.
You still got to pay people.
Yeah, you still got to pay people, but that suggests the military may have used the program for more experimentation than serious intelligence,
right.
But that's just kind of maybe how they justified it. They're like, oh, well, it's it's for intelligence.
Is everybody like showing up laughing and be like, oh, let's see what we can figure out today, or is it, are the people who are working the program taking it extremely seriously?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be an interesting one to get selected for, I think.
But the thing about it though is all the claims, all these things that people claim to have seen, no matter what, I mean, we have the claims and eyewitness accounts and everything, but everything's unverifiable. You can't. There's no way to check. I mean, I guess you could do a polygraph test or something like that, but all of that and even that is highly sketchy. But the only thing that would prove is that they believe that they saw what they saw. You know what I mean?
You'd have to have the person believe it, confirm that their report, right, as it were, and then you'd have to have the person or the place that they're reporting on. You'd have to have either like video camera evidence or like they have to, testify or take a lie detector test as well and be like, yeah, I did drive to the grocery store at that period of time or, something like that. Like, no,
it's kind of
tough. Yeah. Not really easy to prove. Maybe on a small scale, but.
Well, I mean, I think something like this really just kind of highlights our curiosity as people, you know what I mean? And I think it's very safe to say, like, we don't know for sure, but there is some credence to the theory that this wasn't really, they weren't really seeking to do intelligence for this. I think this was a group of curious people that pitched to the government, like, these are the practical applications of it. Can we have funding for it? And they just wanted to explore psychic phenomenon, which, that's fair. I think that's something that's worth exploring, worth experimenting on, especially if, we all have parts of our brain that are untapped that we don't know how to use, I mean, they say that like we only use a small percentage of our brain. But there's been a lot of cultural impact with the idea of remote viewing. It's inspired books, films, podcasts, The Men Who Stare at Goats, which we talked about, the Mysterious Universe podcast, which is out there where they talk about it. I've never listened to it, but apparently that's like an entire podcast where they talk about this kind of thing. So, I mean, so the enduring question is, could this phenomenon be untapped human potential?
Could be.
And then also, like, do visions that Joseph McMoneagle had, does that suggest Mars had intelligent life in its ancient past? There's a lot of
that's a fun conversation in itself.
I mean, a lot of people think that there was life on Mars, and then there's even a bigger, crazier theory is that humans are actually Martians.
I've heard that. Like we left and came here, or maybe we existed on both planets.
Yeah, it's possible. Like maybe we're we're interplanetary refugees. Or descended from them, anyways. So, I mean, whether it's, viewed as pseudoscience, genuine exploration, or remote viewing, just kind of remains a compelling testament to our fascination with the unknown, particularly the Mars session.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for this one, skeptical, more information needed or feasible. I'm going to say I'm highly skeptical on this.
Skeptical, okay.
Yeah, highly skeptical is the direction I'm leading with this one.
I'm skeptical, but interested.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Cool. I'd like to hear more stories.
If I wasn't interested, I wouldn't be talking about it.
Well, right, yeah. I think it's a fun one to like hear about and, and see what people think they've seen, or maybe they have.
And maybe they have. I don't know. Who's to say? Maybe we'll find out one day.
Yeah.
Well, whether you see remote viewing as a breakthrough in human potential or just a fascinating quirk in history, one thing we know, it captures our imagination. From secret Cold War experiments to visions of Mars, these stories challenge us to rethink the limits of perception and the mysteries of the universe. As we wrap up, I leave you with this thought. What if the power to explore distant worlds, both real and imagined, has been within us all along? The power was in you all along.
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep exploring the unknown on Zumundous.
It's like you got the touch.
You got the power.
Yeah. It's within you.
I'm going to remote view my ex-girlfriend's house.
Oh, weird.
Is she with that guy?
Probably.